So sRGB is the one that most consumer printing labs use, and it's used by our projector. So that's why we need it to be in sRGB. You also would be using this for the web stuff. So sRGB is a color space that we're the most concerned with. However, you could also choose Adobe RGB in your camera. But to my knowledge, the only thing that we use Adobe RGB for would be if you had a home photo printer, and sometimes they require it, but not even all of those require that. So that's the only reason we need that one. Let's move on now to talk about a little bit about sizing. So in post-processing, sizing is important. Whether you're post-processing or not, we still need it resized to the size that we need for our projector to work correctly. So let's go over some instances and some information about that. Images must not exceed 1920 pixels wide or 1080 pixels in height. Now, most generally speaking, digital cameras produce an image that is a 3:2 ratio. If we have a picture that is not being post-processed, you are not cropping it in any way, it's coming straight from the camera, it is the default size of 3:2 aspect ratio. If we use these numbers of 1920 pixels wide, our resizing will automatically change the height, and that changes the height to 1280 in height, which is too tall. So for the software that we use, we need to be able to tell it that that image needs to be 1080 instead. So we need to be worried about the height of most of our images when they are straight out of the camera. So let's talk about some horizontal images. You will resize them using the horizontal measurement of 1920 pixels wide. Those images, though, need to be cropped to a 16:9 aspect ratio or something kind of on the elongated, kind of a widescreen type look. So a 16:9 aspect ratio works great with the 1920 wide because it will be 1080 high, and it works perfect. That is what our projector projects. But if you also have like a panorama that's a 2 wide by 1 high or 3 wide by 1 high or so on, then those can also be resized to 1920 pixels wide. However, at least many of our horizontal pictures are either an aspect ratio of 3:2 or 4:5, which means we need to plug in the height criteria when we resize. If we do that width criteria of 1920 pixels wide, then our images will be too tall. For those images where they are a little bit off of square, they're not quite as elongated, they're more square, even though they're still rectangular, they need to be resized with a height of 1080 tall to keep them within the guidelines. Both guidelines need to be inside of the 1920 or 1080 in height. Now, all vertical images are going to be resized using the 1080 pixels high criteria, and all square images are going to be resized by the 1080 pixels. So it's 1080 by 1080. So let's move on, and we're going to talk about exactly how we do resizing on your computer or in Photoshop or Elements. So we have 4 different processes here that are kind of similar. We're going to try to walk through each one of these and explain them. And many things are similar, some are different. So we'll go over each. And the first few steps are exactly the same no matter whether you're on a Mac, a PC, whether you're using Photoshop or Photoshop Elements. So if you are not editing your picture, you do not post-process, you're just going to send in a file that came straight out of your camera, then you probably need to resize it using the PC or the Mac in computer software. So for the Mac, for all 4 of these situations, we need to start the same way. So you're going to locate your file. Where do you store it? Is on an external hard drive or is it on your computer's hard drive. You need to find the file. And then what I want you to do first is to make a duplicate. And why am I having you make a duplicate? Well, if for some reason when you get to the saving point, I'm going to tell you to do a save as. If you accidentally just do a save, you have made your original image smaller. And you will not have that original large size image that you once had. So you will permanently make it smaller, and we don't want to do that. So just as a safeguard, I want you to make a duplicate. So to make a duplicate, if you right-click on the file, you will have an option that says Make Duplicate, and I'd like you to do that. It will come up and it will be placed right next to the original file in your folder system. And then we're going to work on it. Usually it's designated the same title with the exception it will say Copy. So you're going to find the one that says Copy. You're going to click on it. You're going to right-click again on this copy. You will get a drop-down. On this drop-down, you will see where it says the second item over says Open With. If you just hover on that line and you move your cursor over, you should somewhere in here find the word Preview. You'll click on Preview. It'll open an entirely new window. Now, this is just a visual of the drop-down that you're going to get when you go into it. So at the top of your picture, you're going to have a toolbar, and it says Tools. You're going to click on Tools, and then you're going to go down and it says Adjust Size. If you click on Adjust Size, it will open a new window. This is for Macs now. So I'm going to put you guys that use Macs on hold, and now I'm going to explain how to do it on a PC. So the procedure is pretty similar. You followed the first 3 steps of finding your file, making that duplicate copy. Now you're on the duplicate copy, you've right-clicked, you've got Open With. See, here's the menu that dropped down. We're going to see Open With. You're going to move to the right. You're going to find where it says Paint. If you click on Paint, it will open a new window. This is just a portion of that window again, but you can see kind of close to the left edge where I have it circled in red, it says Resize. We're going to click on Resize, and then it's going to open another window. That's for a PC, so we need you to hold on to that information, and we're going to walk through the Photoshop. If you're using Photoshop to resize because you do or you have the ability to do post-processing, you can still resize right within Photoshop. So you're going to open your image into Photoshop, and you are going to then go up to the main toolbar at the top, select Image, go down to Image Size, click on Image Size. It will open a new window, and we're going to hold on that. We'll come back to you in just a minute. On Elements, if you're doing Elements, you're going to open that copy into your Elements program. You're going to see it in the main window. At the top bar, you're going to see the word Image. You're going to click on that. You'll get a drop down. You're going to find the word Resize. You're going to move over then, and it'll open this little window. You're going to select Image Size, and it will open a new window. So now that we have everybody on the same window, let's move over, and they all look very similar. So on this screen, you're going to see this is the PC. Then we have a Mac. Here's the Facebook and Elements. What we want to do for all of them is we always want to be working in pixels. So for the PC, this is what it looked like. And if you click on the little dot to the left of pixels, it will highlight it. Now underneath of it, it says horizontal or vertical. This is where you need to decide which number you're going to plug in as the important one to resize. What you do need to do is to make sure that you have checked Maintain Aspect Ratio. That way it'll keep the proportions the same as you resize. So for the majority of your images, you're probably going to be putting in 1080 in the box next to the word vertical. If you're doing one of those more widescreen shots like the 16:9 or 2:1, 3:1, 4:1 pano, such as that runs horizontally, those are about the only times you're going to do something like that. Now, Otherwise, you're going to be using this vertical number. Once you plug it in, then you will hit OK, and the computer will resize it. And you will be ready at that point to save it. But we're not ready to get into that yet. I'm going to finish with the rest of this, and then we'll talk about resizing in a couple slides. For the Mac, we have the same situation coming up. You will notice that there are two boxes that can be checked, and you should check those: scale proportionately or resample images. Those both are checked, and that's why we want to do that. Then the resolution. Here it says 125. If yours is coming up at 250 or 300 or even 74, you might want to select 125. I use 125 in case I might want it larger than the 74. 74 resolution, pixels per inch, is good for the computer screen, and it will work fine for the projector also. But if you need more pixels, I can use the same file if I have it up to 125. So that's what I use, but you are welcome to use 74. And then you will come up, and in this height or width, you will place the correct number, either 1080 for the height or 1920 for the width. And like I said previously, the majority of them are going to be sized for the height at 1080. Now, when you plug in 1080, say for the height, you will see there's a lock to the right of these numbers. That means it's proportionally changing. So if you notice that it falls outside of the 1920 parameter for the width, then you should use 1920 here. If you use 1920 for the width and you notice that it's bigger than 1080 for the height, then that's one that needs to be sized using the 1080 height. So if you see 1920 appear, if you plug in 1920 in the width and you see a bigger number than 1080 appear in the height, that's when you need to resize according to the height. So you would place a 1080 in the height, and then your width more than likely would appear to be about 1620 like it shows here. You will want pixels on this side. Now, what I encourage you to always do, no matter what program you're using, is make sure that both of these numbers are within those parameters. Once you have it done, you'll click OK, and it will save it out as the size that you wanted to. Now, it's pretty much the same for Photoshop. This is a Photoshop window when it opens up. Again, we're going to want to have this resample checked below. I tend to want to put the resolution in here first because I've noticed if I put the height adjustments in first, or the height or the width, get those numbers set up, and they're fine, and then I change the resolution, my numbers up here change. So if you're going to change the resolution, change it first, and then change the height and width, and you'll be fine. So you do the same as I just explained for the Mac. More than likely, you're going to be changing for the height at 1080, and because we have this little link in here, it's going to proportionally change the width, or vice versa. So that's how you do it. Then you would hit OK for this too. Elements is very much the same. This is the window for elements. Make sure you have constrained proportions checked, resample image checked. Go ahead and put the resolution in that you want in this blank right here. Then you'll come up to this top box, and this is where, again, you enter the height of 1080 for the majority of your images. If you do need a width one, then it would be 1920 in here. They are linked. You can see the link right here. That's because of this constrained proportion, and one will change when the other changes. So that's how you do it. You would select OK, and you have now resized your images, whether it's in a PC, Mac, Photoshop, or Elements. They have been resized in your computer. And for Elements and Photoshop, they'll appear back in the screen that they were before, just smaller. And the same thing really will happen for a PC or Mac. And then you're ready to move on to save. However, if you're one that has been editing in Photoshop, Lightroom, or Elements, you may have to be concerned with converting your profile. If you're just resizing and you did no post-processing, then your profile is whatever you had on your computer, or excuse me, on your camera, which should have been set to sRGB in your computer camera's menu. So if you're having to change the profile to make sure it's correct. In the PC, in Photoshop, you will go up to the top menu bar, hit Edit, find Convert to Profile down almost to the bottom. You'll click on it. It will give you a new window. You will look for sRGB. Now, it doesn't just say sRGB by itself. It says sRGB with a bunch of numbers after it. And so you're going to click that, and it will convert it. If it's elements, it's very similar, except for instead of going to the Edit tab, you're going to go to the Image tab, find Convert to Profile. And then when that window opens up, you will look for the sRGB with the numbers after it. Click on that, and you're good to go. And now we're going to move on to how to save. So saving on a Mac. So now we're going to go back and talk to you non-post-processors. If you are not post-processing, but you have a Mac, and you've already changed the size now, so we're kind of backtracking for you guys. We've changed the size, but you may want to change the profile because you weren't shooting in the right profile. It is possible on a Mac to do that without a post-processing software. I don't know about, I couldn't find it for PC, and I don't have one to check it myself. So I'm going to go with it's only on Mac, but it could be on a PC also. If you were wanting to change a profile without, because you had accidentally shot in Adobe RGB, you can do that. You would go Tools, Assign Profile, and then the drop-down will come, and then you'll look for this number. And then you'll say, okay. Once you do that on a Mac, it doesn't say Save As for this particular step. It says File. You go up to File in the main menu, and then you'll find Export. You'll rename it with the club formatting, which is this. This is what the window looks like. So you fill it in. So it's SC, which stands for Show and Comment. Then you're going to name your image. That's what this one is. Little Buckaroo would be the name of the image. And then your name. And there's just a space between your name and the title and your name in this SC. You might also opt for SO, which is Show Only. Or Share Only. Then this is wherever you're going to store it. That's where it goes. So maybe you have a folder set up that says Riverbend Submissions or something. And that would be what you would be looking for here. So put it where you want to file it. We want it to make sure it's JPEG. We need a JPEG coming in here. And the best quality. Slide that all the way to the best. Click Save, and it will name the file, put it in the correct folder as a JPEG. Then when you're ready to send it into Club, all you have to do is go where you put it and from your email, and you're ready to go. I know this is repetitive and boring, and I'm sorry, but this is, I don't know how else to do it, how to explain it. Okay, saving on a computer, PC, as opposed to a Mac. So a PC or in Photoshop and Elements, it's very similar. So for a PC, what the window looks like when you open it is this. You can save into a new folder if you haven't got one already that says Riverbend Submissions or whatever you want to title it. You hit New Folder. Then you'll be able to custom name the folder down below here by making sure that's highlighted. It usually comes in highlighted, so you just instantly start typing in whatever the name you want it to be. And then you would come down here. This is the naming of the file. So that's where you put that, like this, where it's, see, this is a screenshot. I couldn't do it actually. So like you would name it SO, and then the title, and then your name. So that's what would go right there. And then at the bottom, you'd select JPEG. And once you've done all that, you click Save, and it will put the file in the folder that you put up in here with the proper name, and it will make it a JPEG. If it started out a JPEG, it'll just keep it a JPEG. But you don't want to put it in as a Photoshop document or something, some other option. So you hit Save. Now for Photoshop or Elements, you'd go up to the main menu across the top, and you'll go under File, and you will do a Save As. And when you get to Save As, it opens this window. Again, you fill in the titling of the image, so either that O or SC, the name of the image, your name, where it's going to go, that's the file that we were going to put it in. Click on JPEG. If you click over here, you'll have lots of options. We just want the JPEG, just the plain JPEG. There'll be about 3 different ones listed. We just want plain. Then you're going to look here, and it's check marked. It says Embed Color Profile. This one happens to say Pro Photo RGB. That's another color space. You don't want that. You want it to say sRGB there. If it doesn't, you're going to have to cancel. Say, oh yeah, I forgot to convert to sRGB, and go change it. If you shot in sRGB, it will just automatically come up the right thing right here. And you would hit save, and voila, your information will also go into the correct file. So that's how to do it on those 4 different things. But let's talk about Lightroom. If you're a Lightroom user, post-processor, you're using Lightroom. Unless you've got an old version of Photoshop, if you're doing the cloud subscription, you probably got Lightroom, and this is the very easiest way to do the whole thing. You can do it all in one shot. You can set up a preset, which I'm not going to get into totally tonight, but it's very easy. I'll teach you on another night. But we are going to do the same thing, but we're going to do it, within Lightroom. We are going to find your image in Lightroom. And then once you find it and highlight it, you're going to go up to the main menu at the very top of the screen. You're going to find File. That's the first one. And the drop-down will be Export. I think it actually says Export Photo and Video. You're going to then get this window. It's a little longer than what you see, but I tried to get it in one screenshot, and that's the best I could get. You have to select your location. Where are you going to send it? That's there. So if it's not the correct place, like this one says Riverbend Club, that's where it's going to go, I can hit choose, and then it will give me my file system. And then I just locate where I want it to go, what file I want it to go in. I can make a new file if I want to add it in. But that's what, once I find it and click on it, I would hit choose, and it will put it right there. So that's where my files are going to go at this point in time. I'm going to come down to file naming. If you export one image at a time, you can check this box, custom name. You have some options. You can see there's some arrows here. You will pick custom name, and then you will be able to type right here, and you will type exactly what you want that picture be titled. So do you want it to be a show only or a show with comment? Then the title of the image and your name. And that's all you need for there. It shows you an example of what it's going to look like. Down here, you're going to make sure it says JPEG, color space, sRGB, quality, 100. Image sizing, this is important. This is the sizing part. You're going to check resize to fit. If I were to click on these arrows, you'll see about 4 or 5 different options. But if you pick width and height, it does some magic. It gives you these boxes you can fill in. So for the width, you'll just put in 1920. So width can never be wider than 1920. You'll fill that in. Height can never be taller than 1080. You'll put that in the height side. Then make sure this is pixels. I generally set my resolution to 125. If it's going online, it only needs to be about 74. I give myself a little latitude. I make it about 125. That's up to you, but it says in pixels per inch. That's for resolution. The next thing is you can click sharpen for screen. There's some options. You don't even have to do sharpening output sharpening at all. And we won't get into that because you can't see the whole thing. And you would click export. And the magic thing that it does is it figures out if it's a horizontal or vertical, and it applies whichever is correct to it. And you don't have to worry about which one it is. And it will make it the right size. And it'll keep the numbers under these criteria. And it's done. You don't have to have a special one for verticals or a special one for horizontals. You just put both of those numbers in there, it will figure it out for you. And I had people question me on it, but I know it's right because I went and I tried it. Again, I thought I was right, and I tried it again, and it does work. Right, Jay?
Absolutely. That's one I learned.
So this is by far the easiest way to do it. We could, like I said, make a preset. So all you have to do is bring up Riverbend and click a button and everything will come up the way you want it. We'll work on that at a later time. And then you'd hit export and it'll put it where you just told it to. So Lightroom does it all. And it's the easiest. It'll even add a watermark if you want. Like if you were wanting to put, for showing, we would love to have you put your name on the image so that we can see who the artist was that made the image that we're showing. And we'd like it down there. Well, I can actually teach you how to make a watermark and apply it to the bottom corner of your image as you do that last screen that we just went through. So it automatically would do it for Riverbend every single time. So we can work on that at a later point. I think you've got enough to remember right now. And so then at the bottom of the screen, which you couldn't see, was something about, oops, excuse me, hit the wrong button. Was something about this watermarking was below that metadata thing that you had seen at the bottom of the last screen. There was also something about what to do after it was finished, which is do nothing. And then you would click the export. If you didn't change your name when you were doing the export, like you wanted to do 5 of them at the same time, so you didn't want them all titled the same name, you could uncheck that rename thing, but you'll have to go in and name them later within the file system. Let's go to the next one, renaming. So we talked about this a little bit, but I just made this slide so it was a little easier to see. So naming them for club, this is the share code. So share only is SO, share and comment is SC. Here's the title of the image, so name it whatever you want, best image ever. Put your name, you can, you know, if you're the only Clyde in the club, you could put just Clyde, I suppose, or you could put, like me, I'd put J. Gerse, and then it'll get to me. So you don't have to add your name, is that correct?
You don't have to, but we certainly encourage it.
You know, it tells us who to come, you know, even if it's not shown, if you choose to, this will not show on screen. At the last meeting we did have up in the corner, you could kind of see the names. You won't see those anymore. It was hard to read anyway, and it really was not, we're not going to show those up there unless you put it like down in the corner, one of the corners big, then that's when we'd see it. But so you don't have to add your name, but it does help us to be able to reference back to you without the whole club knowing who it is. So it would only be for bookkeeping, so to speak. And then there's just a space between these. So is there any question at all? I know it's a lot. Go in and get that download, print it out, sit it by your computer, and then you'll be able to walk through the appropriate process for each one of you. Yes?
I guess the main thing is make sure it's formatted out, coming out of the camera. Yes.
If you're not processing, yeah, if you're going to shoot JPEG and you're not post-processing, go into your menus, look for color space, and every company across the board calls it color space. And they all go by sRGB or Adobe RGB. So there will be no difference from brand to brand. I can tell you across the board, it's going to be called color space in your menu, and those will be your 2 options. And you want to pick the sRGB. No, is that a post-processing software? Okay, is it like an app or something? Or program?
Yeah, I downloaded it onto our laptop.
Okay.
And instead of going through all
Mm-hmm.
of these steps, you drag and drop the picture
Mm-hmm.
once you open it, or once you open Photosizer, and then you just go to the right and you type in, 1920 or 1080, whatever size your photo is, and you click OK, and Photosizer does it automatically. Then you drag and drop the photo back to the file
Mm-hmm.
where you're going to send it to the club. It is so easy, and it's a free.
So that's good to know. I don't know if you heard her. Is Photosizer is something that you can download for free, and it runs. It's very similar to what we did here, and it's a drag and drop. And honestly, I told you to go and double click and pull. That's the long way of saying something, but a lot of times you can drag and drop those also. So did I tell you to drag and drop them? No, I did. I had you go the long way, but you a lot of times can do that. But nevertheless, so it's working the same, and it may be a little bit sleeker. This seemed very messed up because I had to start. But it will come much easier when you see your own process just straight through. Any other questions? But thank you very much for that, Dee. And
Can you rename what that also is strictly resizing?
It's strictly resizing as far as the movement, and then you rename.
once you get,
Send me a link to it. Take a look at it. Maybe it will be a resource.
yes.
I just wondered where she got that photo size. Did you just go in and type photo sizer? Yeah, just, download it. Make sure you get the one that.
You went into Google and typed that, or okay? Oh, he told you about it. Okay.
So when you first open it, then of course it's free, but a window comes up and they want you to, the company wants you to upgrade, and then it'll say you want, please purchase, blah, blah. I just hit continue and then it gets you out of that.
Okay.
So it is totally free.
Okay. Good. Anything else?